The Velhari Empire had no word for embarrassment. Rylan had learned this in his third week aboard the Imperial Station Ethon Prime, when he'd accidentally knocked over an entire ceremonial water vessel during a state dinner, and every Velhari in the room had simply stared at him with their luminous violet eyes, not with mockery, not with amusement, but with a kind of calm, clinical curiosity, as though he were a particularly interesting weather pattern. They didn't embarrass. They observed. He wished, deeply and sincerely, that he had inherited some of that quality. Because for the past 4 months, Rylan had been doing something monumentally, catastrophically stupid. He had been falling in love with the Queen. It hadn't been intentional. Nothing about Rylan's posting to Ethon Prime had been intentional. He'd been assigned as a human cultural liaison after the Coalition's diplomatic expansion, mostly because he spoke 3 languages, had a background in xenoanthropology, and, as his commanding officer had put it, managed not to cause any incidents for 6 consecutive months, which is apparently some kind of record. Queen Alara of the Velhari was not what the briefing documents had prepared him for. The documents had described her as politically formidable, intellectually rigorous, temperamentally measured. They had noted her 4-year consolidation of 3 warring Velhari factions into a unified empire. They had mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that she stood 1.9 meters tall, with the deep indigo skin of the high Velhari caste, silver hair that moved with faint bioluminescence in low light, and eyes the color of a gas giant's upper atmosphere. Layered, shifting, impossible to look at for too long without losing your train of thought. The documents had not prepared him for her laugh. It happened in his 5th week, during a cultural exchange session he'd been tasked with facilitating. He had been explaining the human concept of sarcasm, a notoriously difficult thing to translate, and had demonstrated it poorly, accidentally implying that he found the entire Velhari court tremendously efficient, in the way that glaciers are tremendously efficient. Every attendant in the room had frozen, and Queen Alara, seated at the head of the long obsidian table, had made a sound he'd never heard from a Velhari before. Low, genuine, surprised out of her, almost like she hadn't meant to do it. She had laughed. It lasted only a moment. Her expression returned to its customary composed serenity immediately after. But her eyes, when they found his across the table, held something that looked almost like delight. That was when Rylan's problems began. He told himself repeatedly, a professional. He was a coalition liaison. She was a sovereign ruler of 11 star systems. The biological, cultural, and political distance between them was approximately the size of a small galaxy. He was not acting on anything. He was simply aware of a feeling, containing it responsibly, and doing his job. He was doing this very successfully. He was almost certain, until the morning that Chief Attendant Voss pulled him aside in the corridor outside the Eastern Wing. Voss was ancient by Velhari standards, with the pale silver skin of the elder caste and an expression that had probably not changed since before Rylan's grandparents were born. He regarded Rylan the way one regards a mathematical problem that is technically solvable but deeply inconvenient. "The Queen wishes to see you," Voss said. Rylan's stomach performed a small, undignified maneuver. "Is there a briefing scheduled? I don't have anything on my—" "It is not a briefing." Voss's tone carried a quality Rylan could only describe as extremely careful neutrality. "She has requested a private audience. This afternoon. 3rd hour. Private audience." Rylan said, "Of course. I'll be there." He spent the next 4 hours telling himself this was routine. Standard diplomatic check-in. Probably about the trade language proposal, or the upcoming coalition summit, or literally any of 17 normal professional topics. He was almost convincing. The Queen's private reception chamber was smaller than the formal throne room, which was, Rylan reflected, like saying a mountain was smaller than a mountain range. It was still enormous by any human standard, with ceilings that arched 40 feet overhead and walls of dark volcanic glass veined with luminescent mineral deposits that pulsed faintly, like a slow heartbeat. Alara was standing at the far window when he entered, looking out at the star field. She was not wearing formal regalia, just the deep navy of Velhari everyday dress, the silver circlet that marked her rank, and nothing of the ceremonial weight that usually surrounded her. She looked, Rylan thought, almost approachable. He bowed. "Your Majesty, you wished to see me." "I did." She turned from the window. Her eyes settled on him with that characteristic Velhari directness. No easing in, no small talk. Sit, please. He sat. She moved to the chair across from him and sat as well, which was itself unusual. Velhari rulers didn't often put themselves at eye level with their guests voluntarily. I am going to say something, Alaris said, and I would like you to understand that I have considered it carefully before speaking. Ryland's pulse did something unreasonable. Of course, the Velhari do not experience emotional states the way your species does. We are aware of them. We analyze them. We act on them deliberately when we choose to act at all. She tilted her head slightly. We do not hide them. It is not in our nature to be unaware of what we feel or to pretend otherwise. I understand, Ryland said carefully. He did not, entirely, understand where this was going, but every instinct he had was standing at full attention. This means, Alara continued, in the same even tone, that I have been aware, for some time, that your behavior in my presence differs from your behavior in all other documented contexts. A very long, very loud silence. Your respiration rate increases, she said. Your eye contact duration is slightly longer than cultural baseline. Your linguistic patterns become marginally more precise. You choose your words more carefully. These are consistent indicators. She paused. I had my physicians cross-reference them with the human physiological literature in our archives. Ryland opened his mouth, closed it. The literature, Alaris said, and something shifted in her expression. Something very small, very controlled, and completely devastating, was quite informative. Your Majesty, he started. I am not summoning you to address a problem, she said, and her voice was, for just a moment, quieter, less formal. Something underneath the sovereignty, looking out. I am summoning you because the Velhari do not hide what they feel. And I have realized that I have been doing precisely that. She held his gaze steadily. Which is, for us, considerably more alarming than whatever you have been attempting to conceal. The starfield outside the window didn't move. The luminescent veins in the walls kept their slow pulse. Ryland's entire understanding of the next 5 years of his life rearranged itself quietly in the background, like furniture being moved in another room. You've been hiding something, he said slowly. I have been analyzing something, she corrected, with a precision that was so characteristically Velhari, he almost smiled. And I have reached a conclusion, which is, Alara looked at him the way she'd looked at him across the dinner table that first afternoon, with that rare, unguarded quality, something surprised out of her by a creature that kept refusing to be entirely predictable. That your species, she said, has an exhausting and deeply inefficient approach to these matters. Concealment. Inference. Hoping the other party reaches the same conclusion independently. A pause. We do not do this. No, Ryland agreed. You don't. So I will say it plainly. She folded her hands in her lap with the composed grace of someone who had ruled 11-star systems and was not about to be undone by something so minor as vulnerability. I find your presence, specifically, preferable to its absence. I find your mind engaging. I find the way you move through my world, carefully, respectfully, and with that very human quality of trying very hard not to cause damage, to be remarkable. The faintest pause. I find you remarkable. Ryland was quiet for a long moment. Your Majesty, he finally said, I have been trying, for 4 months, not to do anything monumentally unprofessional. I know, she said. I watched you try. It was, and there it was again, that small, genuine thing, quite endearing. He laughed. He couldn't help it. And across from him, Queen Alara of the Velhari Empire, ruler of 11-star systems, unifier of 3 warring factions, most politically formidable sovereign in the Outer Coalition, made that sound again. Low, genuine, surprised out of her. Outside, the stars held their ancient positions, entirely indifferent. Inside, something new had begun.